I passed through the doorway, and then I turned behind me to pull the university-issued wastebasket into the space between the door itself and the door frame, ensuring that it would not latch behind me while I stepped outside for a moment. It was chilly, late January, and I wasn't wearing a coat because I was 21. But there were rules, and I am a rules follower. And one of the rules is nobody smokes in my dorm room. Not even me. Not even when I'm alone in January. So I was standing outside having a puff, and I heard some music coming from down the way. And it sounded pretty good. So I was still standing out there watching as a sexy, red, classic sports car came up around the bend and pulled into a stop at the building 2 buildings up from me. And then I watched as a tall, handsome young man wearing a very well-tailored business suit climbed out of the sexy red classic sports car. And I couldn't help but notice that he walked over and knocked on the door of one of my friends' rooms and then disappeared inside. Now, something about the car kind of tickled something in the back of my brain. So I finished my cigarette, I went back inside, I picked up the phone, and I called one of my friends, who I thought might know something about that particular young man and his sexy car. So I described to her what I'd seen, and she said, "Catherine, no. Don't do it. I'm telling you, he's bad news. That boy is trouble." And she didn't seem to catch on to the fact that I didn't really care. So she amped up her concern. "You know, he's a criminal. He's an ex-con. Do yourself a favor and stay far away from that boy." Still unconvinced, the conversation continued for a moment longer, and she pulled out the big gun, the one guaranteed to inspire action in a 21-year-old girl. "I forbid it." So of course the next day, on my way back from class, I knocked on Martin's door. And I said, "You know, I couldn't help but notice yesterday, a nice-looking young man came and paid you a visit." And he said to me, "Oh, would you be interested in meeting that young man?" And I said, "Oh, yes. Yes, I would." And he said, "Well, we're having a party in a couple of nights. Why don't you come on down? I'll introduce you." Sure enough, yes, I will do that. So a few nights later, I dressed as sexy as I could. I arrived perfectly late. I knocked on Martin's door and he whisked me inside. And as promised, he introduced me to that nice young man. And we struck up a conversation that went so well that he asked me for my phone number, which I willingly gave to him. And then he used my phone number to ask me out on a real date. Okay, this was not some school-sponsored activity or some sports or frat boy kegger. This was actually him picking me up in that sexy car and driving me out to a bar in town where we listened to music played by a live band and had not watered down drinks and actual real food. And not only that, he bought me a small bouquet of flowers. That date went so well that by the end of the night, we had already lined up our next date. And then it became a regular thing. I was dating the bad boy with a sexy car and a sexy suit. Me! And not only that, we were going out with new and exciting people that I hadn't yet met, that weren't a part of the boring campus life that I had been leading up until then. And despite all of the danger, this bad boy was actually on probation. And as a result, he had to really watch his P's and Q's. Because God forbid he get pulled over, DUI, stoned, any one of these things could land him back in jail. So I rationalized, I'm actually with the safest guy I could possibly be with. And this magical romance continued straight through the end of the school year. And then, me and some of my friends decided that the next step would be to move into a shared apartment off campus. So it was me and 3 of my guy friends. I had my own room, they had their own space. It was very much like moving in with 3 big brothers. They didn't especially love him, but they tolerated him for me. And I did not ask their permission before I engaged in that very important relationship milestone, the bestowing of the key. But as I presented him with the key, I reminded him that there are rules that accompany this key. Rule number 1, you are welcome to come and visit me in my apartment with planned activities and my permission. And in the event that I ask you to leave, you will leave. Now, I wanted this to be voluntary compliance, but in the back of my mind, I knew that a couple of those roommates played rugby, and they'd back me up in the event I needed it. But then there was a second rule, and that was, you do not live here. See, he was still on probation, and he had been released from jail into the custody of his parents. I wanted no part of that relationship with his probation officer, so he did not live there, he could be my guest, and that was the end of that. And so the summer finished nicely. I had my own space, my boyfriend had the key, and then classes started, and I got the best news. Despite a mediocre academic career, I had been selected to participate in a winter program in Australia. Oh my God, it had been my dream to go to Australia. I couldn't believe I was selected, one of just 20 of us, to go and participate in this exciting opportunity. I couldn't wait to tell him. And I imagined how this was gonna play out, and he would be so proud of me and supportive of me. But that's not how that conversation went. For some reason, when I revealed to him my really exciting news, he turned and he looked at me and he said, "You're leaving me?" No, I'm not leaving you at all. I am going to Australia, but then I'll come back. This isn't about you at all. And so my perfect relationship experienced its first major fight, and it was chilly for a couple of days. And my roommates watched all of this unfold, and I think they were thinking, finally, she's gonna leave this loser. But no, I was hurting. How could I have this wonderful thing and this ugly fight? But I left the door open that he could make it up to me. He could apologize. He could offer his support. And so about a week later, he called me up and he said, "Hey, I want you to come over and see me at work today. And so I went. And when I pulled up, he was standing out on the sidewalk wearing his sexy suit, big old grin, and in each hand, he held the leash of a little tiny cuddly kitty. 2 kitties, baby cats, for me. And of course I was instantly in love. I mean, he was apologizing to me for being such a jerk and not supporting me. What a fantastic gift. So I grabbed those little kitties and I snuggled them and I took them home and I informed my roommates that now there were cats in the house. And they kind of looked at me like, has she lost her mind? This isn't an apology. This is a leash to keep you stateside. No. Don't be silly. I'm still going to Australia. He's gonna take care of them. I had it all mapped out in my mind. The only thing was, in order for him to come and go at will to take care of the kittens, I was gonna have to relax rule number 1. There was no way from Australia I was going to be able to micromanage his comings and goings. Very likely he was going to end up in my house when I didn't know he was there. But the kittens were going to be in good hands, and I was going to be in Australia. So it seemed worthwhile to me. But something else had happened during the big chill while we were fighting, is he started drinking a little more heavily. And he started smoking pot again. So as we resumed our relationship, he stopped feeling like that safe haven for me, and he started feeling a little bit like work. All of a sudden, instead of going out and being the party girl with all of these really exciting new friends, I was the designated driver. And that was decidedly less exciting for me and way less fun. But not only that, he stopped being super reliable and stuff. He would show up late if he showed up at all, and then he wouldn't want to do anything. And I was trying to live an exciting life. So as I planned for this trip to Australia, I went to my roommates and I said to them, hey, can you please just keep an eye on the kittens, make sure that they're fed, make sure that the litter box is clean? And they came up with the great idea that they would check it by pooping in it. Because it would be hilarious for him to have to clean their poop out of the litter box. And I begged them, please don't do that. The cats do not deserve that. But I hopped on that plane and I flew down under, and whatever happened, happened. I don't know. And I had a blast. And I had periodic check-ins with my roommates and my boyfriend, but they were very brief because it was long distance, and the timing was really wretched. But I gathered that things weren't going that well. That my boyfriend had become kind of a loser. In my absence, he spent a lot of time moping around in the living room, getting stoned, getting drunk, and just watching TV. So I wasn't super excited about coming home, but as I started worrying about that, I started to realize he was my ride home. Could I count on him to be at the airport to pick me up? What if he didn't show up? What if he was late? What was I going to do? And I started making some backup plans amongst the group that I was traveling with, where I could go home with this one, and then that one would drive me home the next day, and all the things. And I was really nervous about that, and honestly, I wasn't really looking forward to seeing him. Why should I be this nervous? Well, as it turns out, the plane landed, and there he was waiting for me in the baggage claim area with some of my favorite candy. So I thought things were going to be okay. But once I got home, I realized that his idea of a good night out was going over to one of his friends, drinking beer, smoking pot, and watching Beavis and Butthead. Night after night after night. And I had a wardrobe of sexy going out clothes that I wanted to wear. So I started saying to him that this wasn't really working for me. And I said, you never take me out anymore. We never have fun. And he said to me, that's a wooing thing, and you've already been wooed. So I said, well, I'm quickly becoming unwooed. But he didn't seem to get it. Nothing penetrated the haze in his head. And as winter turned to spring and we were heading into graduation, I started thinking, I want something better than this. I think at some point we're probably gonna break up. Yeah. And I started imagining what the next guy I went out with would be like. The things that we do, the fun that we would have. But I hadn't made definitive motion in that direction. I was content to just kind of ride it out till the end of the school year and let it die a natural death. Until the day he came to me and he said, I have to talk to you. And I said, well, okay, come sit down. And I grabbed the ashtray, we sat out on the balcony, we both lit up our cigarettes, and he said, well, I've gotten caught with a couple of dirty drug tests, and I'm kind of in trouble with my probation officer right now. And he wants to talk to my parents about it. So I told him I live with you now. And I looked at him and I said, you don't live with me. I made it very clear when I gave you the key that you are my guest, but that you do not live here. And so he looked down, beaten, humble, and sad. And then he reached in his pocket and he pulled out his key ring and he started unwinding my apartment key. And he put it down on the table between us. Ever gentle and kind, I looked at him and I said, what the hell do you think you're doing? And he goes, well, it's pretty obvious you don't want to be with me anymore. And I said, really? What exactly gave you that idea? Was it all of the times I told you that I'm becoming unwooed? With that, he stood up, walked off the balcony into the apartment, walked through the living room, and out the door. And I looked over on that table, I picked up the key, I put it in my pocket, walked in the balcony door, across the apartment, and I locked the front door.